This is Greg Collins. If you wake up in the morning and you're already thinking about how you're going to have to discipline kids, well, you may be crossing that fine line between being strict and being a jerk. All right. Hope you had a good week of substitute teaching this last week. It's good to be back at it. Sometimes I'll get home from school in the afternoon and I'll beat the school buses. I even enjoy watching the school buses go by, just like my grandkids. I know they like to stand in their bedroom window and watch the school buses go by and look forward to the time that they get to ride the bus to school. Last week's episode about bell ringers, it's kind of funny. If you look at just the downloads in the first week per episode, it's one of our top 5 so far in 2022. And here we are in August. It is August 21st, 2022. Glad you listened to that. You know, I've come to the conclusion, though. Episodes like that, it's kind of like political speeches. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter how good it is, how lousy it is, whatever. If you had your mind made up that you're a bell ringer person before you listen to that podcast, well, it's not going to change your mind. If you were on the fence about bell ringers, maybe I gave you a few thoughts you can deal with, but you know, if people are set on something that they really like, stick with it. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. If I get an option, I won't be doing that, but that's what that episode was all about. All right. The opening today might have been a little bit harsh, but again, this is one of those episodes, kind of like bell ringers, where knowing substitute teacher observations, what substitute teachers see that maybe, I guess the teachers see it because they're part of it, but sometimes they're just not aware of the way it comes across. I've worked with I don't officiate softball or baseball anymore. In fact, this happened when I was doing baseball. Little League even, I worked with an umpire once that as we were walking on the field, he said, I can't wait to see if one of these players is going to throw their bat after I call strike 3, because I can't wait to throw them out. Well, to me, that's going from being strict, and you have to be strict with the rules in sports, to being a jerk, looking forward to doing that. Another story I once heard, this is a Major League Baseball, it was his rookie year, umpire, and there's a story that he asked the other umpire, he said, I think I'm not as comfortable recognizing balks. What should I look for when I'm looking for a balk? And the senior guy said, listen, don't go looking for anything. Just know the rules. And when you see it, you'll know it. So that's what we're talking about today. Don't be strict just for strict, just for the sake of being strict. Don't go in there looking into your class saying, how am I going to boss around these kids today? Here's what happens. And it happens with your relationships with both the students and the other teachers. And here's what substitute teachers see other teachers do sometimes. Now, granted, it is the minority that fall into this category, but I think it's something we need to get out on the table right away, because if a substitute teacher works with this type of teacher before they work with anybody else, they might think this is the normal thing to do, when maybe being a jerk about the way you conduct your class is not the normal way you should be. Got to be strict sometimes. And I don't mean, physical disciplinary issues. I'm talking about even classroom issues. Sometimes you got to be strict about work. Sometimes you got to be strict about various little incidental things in the classroom, but don't forget to give those second chances. Don't become a jerk in the way that you hand out your strictness. Let's talk about that. One last referee comment, then I'll be done. Last year, my cohorts, every year they vote on a couple of referees just in our group. It's a small group of maybe 50. They vote on the referee of the year, and I got it last year, and I'm convinced that it's not really that I'm that great of a referee. I try my best. I think it's because I was friendly to them. There are some referees, now not in my organization, but there's some referees that I see on discussion boards that just come across as jerks. And you just don't want to work with those people. They look down on you if you like miss a call. Well, they've got their judgmental face on. They don't have their helpful face on. So same thing goes in the school system. Think back to when you were a student. Probably most of you that are listening to this, it's a lot more recently than me. I'll bet. Now, maybe you don't even like to use the phrase jerk, but if I ask you the question of all the teachers you ever have, who was the biggest jerk? I'll bet you have a teacher that comes to mind. Now, formulate this in your head. Why did you feel that way? Here's my speculation and what I've seen in the school systems. I can walk down the hallway, not very often, but sometimes I'll run into teachers that just seem like they have one of those permanent scowls on their faces. Or maybe you can just see in their eyes that their eyes are glaring, that it's almost like they're just daring a student. In some cases, it's almost like they're just daring a teacher to challenge them about something. And when they do, they're going to blow up. Now, I'm not talking about having a bad day. Sometimes you have traumatic events in your life, changes your disposition. Now, relate that over to the kids. A lot of times these kids have traumatic events in their life. Sometimes their daily lives are a challenge. And we have to be sympathetic about that. We have to be understanding. One of the things I did the first time I was ever a long-term substitute teacher, there was a student. I can't remember if this student was an A student, but I would definitely categorize them as a good, helpful student in the classroom. There was a traumatic event that happened in this student's life, and we had a test, I think, within that next week. They took the test, and they basically bombed. Now, this just happened to be a situation where I would eat lunch every day with the regular teachers. So I just brought it up. I said, listen, here's a student. In fact, I'm not even going to tell you the student's name until I'm through with what I'm saying, because I want your recommendation. And I said, this student always gets good grades, and they absolutely bombed this last test. The traumatic event that this student had been through, all the other teachers knew about it too. And I said, what do you think I should do? And they said, well, we understand that there's two ways of handling it. You can just say a grade is a grade is a grade, regardless of what happens. Or you can maybe be nice about it and say, you know, I understand what you've been going through. I'll give you the option of retaking the test. Won't be the same test because that wouldn't really be fair to the other students, but it'll be the same material. So if you just study the material that we've been through, I'll give you another few days. You tell me when you're ready to take it, and we can go from there. You know, you can go through the pattern of being too strict. That's a situation. Now, I didn't just do it on my own. I asked for some help. That's a situation which I took on my own to not be as strict on grading as maybe I would have otherwise. Now, you do have to be careful about that. If you're going to give one student that privilege to retake a test, you need to give other students that have been through things as well a chance to retake the test. Now, the difference is going to be the students that don't care, they're not going to want to retake it anyway. The students that really care will not own. I had a student cry. Do you give a student a second chance because they cry after a test because it was not up to their usual standards? Reminds me of a funny discussion I had with a high school teacher who he was saying one of the girls was crying in his class over a test score. And I said, well, what on earth did she get? And he said, she missed one, but she was so paranoid about wanting a perfect score. She was upset about it. Now, I don't know if you give her a second chance on that, but the types of things we are talking about, maybe the strict part is generally about making exceptions. You could go to, I'm going to throw this situation out and see what you think. Let's say an athlete is 2 test points from getting a high enough grade on his test to play in that game, that football game Friday night. We've all got football starting. What do? Are you strict? If you are, I'm going to say that's okay because a test score is a test score. Is there a way? Now maybe you can be diplomatic about it. Maybe, there's a way you can present it and still stick to your guns. You could say, I understand. Maybe going up to them in their emotional state and saying, I'm sorry, you should have applied yourself. I'm not sure I would have said it that way. If you like saying it that way, that's fine. I would have done one of two things. I would have stuck to my guns. I'm not going to tell you which one I would decide. I would have stuck to my guns, but been as diplomatic in my approach as possible. For that matter, if you stay with the strictness, they're probably not going to let it happen again. That's one thing, by the way. I guess there's levels of strictness. You're either strict. Let's put the extremes, strict and jerk. If you're in the middle and you're one of those, this isn't even in the middle, but you're one of those that you come across as strict, but then you never really follow through on the disciplinary procedures or you fudge on the test scores, they're not going to believe you anyway. Your strictness makes no difference. Maybe back to this kid that needed the 2 points. Maybe you give them extra credit to get those 2 points. Now, you could just do that and be done with it, and they pick it up, that's great. If you give them extra credit, do it this way. Tell the whole class, all right, here's a project. Some of you need a few points. It's a 5-point project. Work on it if you want to. If you want to get your grades up, 5 points, everybody's eligible. Rather than being a jerk and tell that kid he can't play football Friday night, sorry, non-sports people. That's the example I picked up on. Maybe you could say they were 2 points short of making the academic team. I don't know. However you want to relate to it. But give all those kids a chance. If come off of your strictness just a little bit, give that kid a chance. Give everybody a chance. And I guess the bottom line of today's episode is this. You have to be strict about some things. That's okay. There's a lot of you. In fact, I'm going to say there's the majority of you that are stricter about things than I am. And believe me, that's okay. I think my personality and my lack of strictness actually negatively affect the way people looked at me on the job because I was in an industry that tends to be cutthroat. When I didn't join in their cutthroatness, well, they kind of looked down upon me. I knew I was in the wrong profession. Unfortunately, I didn't know that until I was retired and became a substitute teacher. But don't be a jerk. Analyze yourself. Be strict if you need to be strict, but do it in such a way that you're not a jerk about it. Instead, you turn it into something helpful. Johnny, you knew these consequences, but at the same time, I understand that everybody goes through things. Let me help you do better in the short term, in the long term, because I want you to be successful. So let's get rid of the jerks and let's apply our strictness in a helpful manner. And what the heck, I bet it results in making you a person that teachers will call more often and that students will look more forward to when you're in their class.